All right, folks, hour number 3, Andy McCarthy will join us, the great Andy McCarthy, to talk about Eric Holder and to talk about the IRS scandal. But I just want to give you a story. You probably haven't heard about this. According to the Associated Press and according to the Daily Caller, in West Point, Mississippi, in a rural town there, an Iraqi war veteran suffered a life-threatening beating. He's now in a medically induced coma. You know why? Because he went into a Waffle House that he was warned, quote, wasn't safe for whites. Are you listening, Eric Holder? Not that you care. Wasn't safe for whites. So he and his friend went in there. They started picking on him, whatever. A confrontation ensued. Cops came. They left. They went into another place down the road. They had been followed. So when they came out to the parking lot, they started beating on this white former Marine, well, white Marine, not active, and just a disgrace. 1 in the morning, they kicked him, they punched him until he was unconscious, and he had to be taken away. In America, he was warned, don't go into that Waffle House because it's not safe for white people. So he goes in, leaves, and goes to another place, and in the parking lot gets beaten to a pulp. Where is our Justice Department? We'll follow up on this story. Andy McCarthy's coming up. I want us all to watch this.
You and I talked a lot, though, Reverend, after the verdict in the Trayvon Martin case. You said that needs to be a moment. Many others said the same thing. We have also seen, as you alluded to, you led a march yesterday after another black man died in an incident involving police in New York City. Now you are going to be giving the eulogy for yet another funeral tomorrow. What's it going to take for that moment to change things, really?
I think it's going to take legislation. Our demonstrations must lead to legislation. We need federal legislation. And we need the criminal justice system, which is why the federal government coming in is so important.
All right, I don't know what, again, I still don't know what he's talking about, what he hopes to legislate here, the right of a police officer to defend him or herself. Joining us now, folks, as promised, Andy McCarthy, former federal prosecutor. He's a man who helped put the Blind Sheikh behind bars, New York Times best-selling author, columnist, and senior fellow at the National Review. His great book, Faithless Execution, Building the Political Case for Obama's Impeachment, is his latest. Hello, sir.
Steve, how are you?
Good, good. Always great to talk to you. You have any idea what this man's talking about? Our demonstrations must lead to legislation. Legislate what?
Well, yeah, that's exactly the problem. See, we already do have legislation. Murder is against the law. So in terms of excessive use of force and the like, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, we have statutes about that. And on the federal side, we have murder and other violent crime brought into the federal tent by means of what's known as the civil rights statutes, which invoke federal jurisdiction when you have a situation where somebody has acted either on the basis of racial bias, or if you're a police officer acting under the cover of law and they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you had an intention to deprive someone of a specific federal right, then you also have federal jurisdiction from that. But Al Sharpton doesn't want legislation in the normal sense. What he wants is something that guarantees an outcome. And the problem with this whole debate over Ferguson all along, Steve, has been that justice primarily is a process where we want to make sure that people who are brought into the justice system, whether they're crime victims or accused defendants in criminal cases, we want to make sure of transparency. We want to make sure they're treated with fairness. We want to make sure that whatever the verdict in a case is based solely on the evidence. That's what the justice system is. What Sharpton wants is basically a social justice system where he gets a guaranteed outcome regardless of what the facts are. And that's why he doesn't, I suspect That's why he doesn't want to articulate what kind of legislation he thinks he wants, because he'd have to try to explain that he wants a guaranteed outcome, which is in any case where there is a black either victim of crime or perpetrator of crime, he wants the black victim, and I shouldn't say of crime, of a violent incident like this one, he wants the black victim case to be assured of there being a criminal conviction, regardless of whether the evidence proves out a criminal conviction. And when it's a black perpetrator, they essentially don't want a prosecution. And if you tried to legislate that, I don't think there'd be too many votes for it.
Well, you never know. I wonder where Eric Holder would fall on that. You know, you and I have touched on Eric Holder many, many times over the years, Andy, that I've been privileged to talk to you. And it even predates his being appointed Attorney General of the United States. It goes back to his role in freeing the FALN terrorists in the Clinton Justice Department. But his unprecedented action here, this third autopsy, this going down, while there are still two investigations going on, while the grand jury is being seated and making the remarks he made about he's a black man and it's personal and how he was abused by police supposedly. This is just unprecedented. And Pat Buchanan said he's acting more like Al Sharpton than the Attorney General of the United States.
Yeah, was Holder abused by the police when he took over the building at Columbia when he was a student? Is that what he's talking about?
No, well, that's interesting. No, he said the New Jersey Turnpike.
Yeah, well, you know, look, the fact is he's now Attorney General, regardless of, you know, what his predispositions are and what his life experience is. And his job is to enforce the law. And a profound principle of American law is equal protection under the law, which means everybody gets the same protection regardless of race, color, creed, belief system, and the like. And it's really what Eric Holder's doing here is really a remarkable perversion of the civil rights statute, Steve. If you think about it, the civil rights statutes are designed to make sure that people are not abused by government processes or abused, say, by people acting under color of law, such as the attorneys at the Department of Justice, based solely on their race. Now, have a look at what happened in Ferguson and what's happening in Ferguson. I am not making a case for the officer in terms of excessive use of force because we don't know what the facts are yet. And if it turns out that he used excessive force under the circumstances, then he ought to be prosecuted under the laws of Missouri, and I'm confident that he will be. But there is no federal civil rights offense unless you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone either acted out of racial animus or with a purpose to deny someone a specific federal right. There's not a scintilla of evidence of that based on everything we know about this officer and everything that we know about this swift, violent, and tragic altercation. You're not supposed to open up a federal investigation unless you have a reasonable basis to think that you can succeed.
Right.
And that means you have to make out every element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. They can't prove this. So Holder's only way of saying that there's racial animus here, which is what he needs for his civil rights case, is to say the officer is white and the victim was black, which means he's investigating this officer because of the color of his skin, because there's nothing else there. That's exactly what the civil rights laws are designed to prevent.
That is very interesting. That is a very very astute analysis and very interesting take on this whole matter with Holder. I do want to, before we run out of time, Andy, we're going to speak to Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch in this hour. Yesterday I had Paul Ryan on the show, and I told him about what Fitton had said on Friday, which the media has ignored, and that is that the Justice Department, here we are again, Justice Department attorneys spoke to Judicial Watch and said, hey, by the way, those Lois Lerner emails, they exist. All emails exist. They're all backed up. We have them all. Nothing is gone, which is in stark contrast and contradicts what was sworn to under oath by the commissioner of the IRS. But they also added, according to Fitton, it's going to be too complicated to find those emails. We also have word today from an IRS attorney that Lois Lerner's BlackBerry was deliberately destroyed after the start of the congressional probe. Now, Ryan says that we're not going to stop. They're not going to get away with this. We're going to keep digging, 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 digging. What's your take on this?
Well, I suspect that part of what Congressman Ryan, and I don't want to speak for him or read his mind, but I imagine that part of what he means is the prospect of having Lois Lerner prosecuted for obstruction of justice by Eric Holder and this Justice Department and this administration, when it appears that she's certainly, carrying the water for them. She's the sort of nexus between the IRS and higher up in the administration. It's absurd to think that that's going to happen.
Right.
On the other hand, it's a 5-year statute of limitations, and Eric Holder's not going to be Attorney General forever. This administration's not going to be governing forever. And I think the Republicans ought to be running on, among other things, not only conducting a thorough investigation of the IRS scandal and the multitude of Obama scandals, but on the promise that wrongdoers eventually will be prosecuted and brought to justice once we get a non-corrupt Justice Department and a non-corrupt administration. I think that's an appealing argument.
Absolutely, and I hope they're listening, and I hope they have the brains to do that. Hey, Andy, great to talk to you. I could go on and on and on, and I appreciate you coming on, sir.
Thanks, Steve. Good to talk to you.
Have a great Labor Day weekend. All right, folks. Andy McCarthy. Yeah, and it is that is a great campaign theme for Republicans to run on, and also the fact that Eric Holder is committed a remarkable perversion of the civil rights statute, as indicated by Andy. All right, we're coming back, folks, with lots more. We're going to take a look at the prospects of the Republicans winning the Senate. Don't go away.